Hello and welcome to the Full Force, in actual fact, Comics News Burst. Yes, today we are talking with the awesome Brian Total Action Hickey of Total Toy Books fame about the amazing Battle Action Force Deluxe Treasury Editions. Brian, how are you doing, my good man?
I'm doing great, Chris. Great to be back on the show, and always love being here to talk Battle Action Force with you. It's always great fun.
Can I just say I'm so happy that we didn't have that same issue we had last time where when we came in straight away, it was like, and there's some sort of delay, something's broken, let's start again. No, brilliant. Hope everyone's good in the chat as well. We've got Toy Connections who's watching later or will listen on your break. Good. You're listening now. That's great. Michael Jean Fleming, MCDJ ACDC. That's an amazing name. Jamelin Parks and Punking. Hope everyone's doing really well in the chat. Who's watching? Hope you're having a great Monday. I will, full disclosure, Brian, I had surgery this morning on my shoulder. I'm going to show everybody. Like, check this out. Check this out. This is probably going to be like, if you're a bit queasy, I understand, and if you want to turn away now, spoiler alert, this is going to be at the same level of gross as you can expect to see in certain Battle Action Force comics where they get a little bit violent. So you ready for this? Here you go. Oh, look at that. Ooh, look at that. Ooh. I know. That was a little cheeky benign lipoma that was removed this morning. So I'm fine. Everything's good. No pain yet, although it was insane. And we're not here for that, but I just wanted everyone to be fully aware of what's going on. Just in case I start acting a little bit weird, or if I run off sweating, that's why. No, everything's cool. Brian, how are you doing, buddy?
Well, I'm doing great. No surgery, not yet anyway. But other than that, I'm doing really, really great. It's a kind of a hot, balmy kind of summer's evening here in Ireland, which is amazing because it's been really kind of grey and cold. Ever since I got back from Joe Fest. So
I'm so
I was
jealous.
In Joe Fest a few weeks ago, like 38 degrees. It was amazing. Beautiful, beautiful weather. Came back into Ireland, grey, freezing cold. But it was nice today. So we'll take it while we get it.
That's your own fault for living there, isn't it? Really, that's your own fault. But no, that's amazing, mate. I'm so jealous and I'm so sad I didn't get to see you guys while you were over at Joe Fest, because that would have been amazing. It looked like it was an incredible event. Obviously, Bob seemed to have an amazing time as well. Paddy had a great time. A lot of the UK crew got over there. Mark Seddon got over there from Talking Joe. Who else? Stephen Kelly was there. I'm sure there were more. And apologies if I've missed out.
Ray Murphy was there too.
Ray Murphy, of course. I missed everyone.
It was great. We had a great kind of Irish UK contingent kind of descend on Augusta. There must have been about maybe 10 or 11 of us. It was a big crowd, and we were hanging out with the Skeletron crew, the Marauder crew, and just meeting loads of new people there. And big shout out to Ken there and Toy Connections, who got to hang out with us as well. So
brilliant.
We had a super time.
Awesome. Jimmy's asked for an impromptu disorder of battle. We haven't done that in a long time, but then again, neither of us have the time or bandwidth to do that anymore, unfortunately, Jimmy.
Well, the ultimate disorder of battle is going to be these treasury editions that are going to be released later this year.
There you go. Maybe we could have episodes where we just go through the entire treasury edition together. Brian, just read it on screen for everybody.
Stories time, Chris and Brian.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure that would be terrible. I think lots of people would want to murder us for that. RKW says that's just a graze. Yeah, it's nothing really. Andrew Franks, hello Andrew. He says, hey, Brian reviews your surgical scars spin-off when? I don't think that's going to happen. How many potatoes would you give that scar?
Oh, I'm giving that's on the potatometer. That is going for, it's going to be at least an 8. It
only goes up to 5 usually, so that's impressive. It's off the scale. Brilliant. Ray Murphy says Joe Fest was amazing. Hi Ray in the chat as well.
Hey Ray.
And A Punk with Toys says, "Hey, Chris and Brian, who I do believe I met at Joe Fest at the pool with the Murphy brothers," says A Punk with Toys.
Oh yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, wow. Oh, that's so many people and the pool. Yeah, was actually brilliant. Hanging out by the pool. I wasn't in the pool. I didn't come prepared for that.
Me.
But it
Sounds
was
a bit
awesome.
to me. I wish I'd been there for that. Actually, that'd have been great. Right. Anyway, should we get stuck into what we're talking about today, buddy?
Let's get into it. Yeah.
Let's do this. Cue the music. Anyway, yes, we're back for on screen for you. Brian, we're talking deluxe treasury editions. Now, of course, we had the pleasure, the honor of being able to kind of announce this with you. You've given us a lot of kind of exclusives on this particular project, so we very much appreciate that. And it's just been very exciting hearing about this, coming soon sort of thing for a long period of time. Obviously, we were able to drop the announcement as well on video with yourself. That was really cool, and it was out there as a pre-order. Now the early bird's still going, is it not? And yes. Again, like you can get these, link in the description right now at any point during this particular interview. But before we get into the specificity and the details of all of the ordering and all that kind of stuff, Bud, should we go through the what these are, what we're dealing with here, and how it's kind of broken down a little bit?
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, we can dive into it volume by volume. And look, we've got volume 1 up here on the screen. And just to break this down, this is kind of if we take this whole collection, it focuses in on the stories from 83 and 84. So that is essentially your Palatoy era Action Force stories. So the bad guys, Baron Ironblood and the Red Shadows, and then you've got your Action Force teams of Z Force, Space Force, SES Force, Q Force going up against them. So it's very much in that kind of Palatoy era, or focuses on that era within the Action Force history.
Yeah.
So volume 1, they're kind of stacked with a chronology that matches with the continuity that was set up by the writers at the time. So volume 1 gives you that very first Action Force story that was serialized over June and July in 1983. And then the mini comics, which came out then later in the summer, they were released free with the comic Battle every 2 weeks, and we had 5 of those in total. And then when we come into the October 1983, Action Force becomes kind of a main component of Battle.
And can I just? I think it's probably a good thing to say as well. I know you've kind of technically said it in one way already, but these editions, they're not going to be like as the comics came out, because that was all over the place, wasn't it, in terms of the continuity of stories and stuff like that?
You had stories kind of running parallel with each other,
right?
And so, we take a really good example here. You had Operation Bloodhound, which is the mammoth story, which we covered, I think, with a few Disorder of Battle episodes through that.
Don't even think we finished it.
I don't think we finished it. We probably have 1 episode left to go.
Yeah.
But that was a mammoth story where which picks up immediately after the events in the mini comics. And parallel with that, you had another kind of mammoth story, Desert Strike, which was a Z Force story, and
that we did cover in full.
Yes, we did. That is up there. If folks want to check out the Full Force YouTube listings, you will find the Disorder Battle for Desert Strike, which is a phenomenal Z Force story written by Jerry Finley Day. But it wouldn't make sense to include Desert Strike in with Operation Bloodhound in this particular volume, because it would just break up the continuity in that volume 1. So the Z Force, what I call the Z Force trilogy, are 3 large Z Force focused stories, which were all written by Jerry Finley Day and illustrated by Vanyo. So same writer, same artist, on this really lengthy run of stories, which themselves connect into each other, and they're all in volume 3. So they're collected in volume 3. So while there's only 3 stories in volume 3, there are 3 really long stories.
Really massive ones. That's cool. I should be going through the images as you say this, really. I didn't realize we were switching across volumes, but that's a very good point. Here's a little size comparison as well. So we have obviously in the past shown an example of how big the Treasury edition is going to be. You even had a kind of mock-up in hand before, didn't you? Have you got one now?
I actually do. Let's have it right here on the floor beside me. I have to put it on the floor because it's too big for the table. No, I can't. Can I even fit it? Look, it's. I can't even fit it in the screen. I've got to.
That's amazing.
I mean, they're big. These are big books, and I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because there's been a lot of comments on social media. People asking about, obviously the cost of the books, the size of the books, and things like that. And it's always very hard to kind of to get a sense of that from looking at.
Right.
But these are oversized. Rebellion, who's our kind of publishing partner on this and who own the Action Force, the Battle Action Force scripts and artwork, they've released a lot of kind of historical content from their archives over recent years. And people who follow Rebellion on social media will be very aware of, say, the treasury of British comics and a lot of the releases that have come out, comics from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that they've been releasing them, which is fantastic. But these particular releases here are even larger in format. They're not following the standard release size from Rebellion. They're much bigger. There's more pages, and the size is significantly larger. So, so it's just this image here gives a pretty decent sense of the scale of the book. Compared to a Red Shadow action figure. It is a chunky volume, and of course, it's priced accordingly. But I know we'll talk about it in a bit more detail later, but we have the, right now we've got the special early bird offer, which allows people to get 3 books for the price of 2 if they buy all 3 as a bundle deal. But we'll touch on that again in a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And here's volume 2 as well. Again, another beautiful cover. And again, kind of focusing visually, aesthetically on SAS Force here as well.
We've got SAS, and this is a beautiful cover by John Cooper. So it's taken different elements of John Cooper's artwork and compositing them together to make the cover up. But if we break down, whereas we talked about the stories in volume 1, volume 2 obviously has a lot of stories in there, which it picks up kind of post the events of Operation Bloodhound. The Red Shadows have kind of moved out of South America. They've got bases, in Asia, across Europe. So this collects stories like Operation Spearhead.
Yeah.
Codename Kraken is in there.
Yeah. Wait, hang on. Where is he?
Hey, he's right there. Right there. Yes.
Cheeky face.
There he is.
How difficult, Brian, was it? I feel like the hardest part of this particular project, and I kind of get the same kind of vibe with a lot of these big compendium sort of deals, is what stories go in what, how it fits, where's the nice natural end point, to get like each book a kind of balanced, similar sized sort of, page count and all that kind of stuff. How difficult was that process, or had you kind of worked it out early on?
It was, I suppose I already had an idea in my head about how it would break down. In the book Total Action Force: The Battle Years, there's the very last chapter in that talks about the comics continuity, and it's basically like an article that I wrote describing the loose continuity that was set up by Jerry Finley Day, supported by James Tomlinson and Scott Goodall, and that article formed the basis for how these initial volumes would be kind of split up. So focusing in on that kind of the origins of the Red Shadows, the big Operation Bloodhound story, then looking at the European-based missions in volume 2, and the main one in that is Operation Claymore. That's the epic story in volume 2, and then volume 3 is I mean, that's a book.
I like the cute little. I love these little comparison images where you've got the figure, kind of like making sense with the book as well. I like that. That's really cool. Anyway, that's how big that one is. Same size as the other one. Sorry, bud. I know you was. Yeah, go
on. So volume 3, then, really, as I said, that's the Z-Force trilogy. And growing up as a kid, Z-Force was always my favorite squad within the toys. And because I always loved Vanyo's art style.
Yeah.
And how he depicted the Z-Force characters. That I always wanted to see a book that just brought that trilogy together. And as a kid, I didn't realize that Jerry Finley-Day wrote all of that stuff because he would use pen names. So we had Ken Owen was a pen name that he used, and his other pen name was Frank Noble.
Oh, right.
And so when you look at those stories, when you're reading those stories in the comics and you see the credits, you see Frank Noble, you see Jerry Finley-Day, and Ken Owen used interchangeably throughout. So I used to think as a kid they were 3 different writers. But it was when we were researching Total Action Force: The Battle Years that we realized that they were all pen names for the one author, because he was basically writing half the comic, and the editors didn't want it to look like one guy was doing a lot of the work.
That's crazy.
So they brought in the pen names. So in fact, he was doing more than half the comic, because stories.
Does that mean he has to pay more than one lot of tax on everything he does now?
Maybe, but running alongside with, say, the Action Force stories, you had other non-Action Force related stories that were also written by Jerry Finley-Day. So he was writing most of the comic. It's like and I know we're going to talk about Jerry in a little bit, but he's a giant in British comics, and we'll talk a bit more about him when we get to that. But
that's brilliant. I did not know that about Jerry. I didn't know that at all. That's crazy.
I actually think, Chris, when we did the Disorder of Battle for Desert Strike,
right,
I think that is Ken Owen. I think is that we talked about Ken Owen, and we're like, we don't know who Ken Owen is. We can't find out about him on the web. So even when we recorded that, we didn't know that was Jerry Finley-Day. So.
That's crazy, man. And here's obviously a Z-Force skip next to the Battle Action Force Volume 3, just to show the size of that one as well. I love this one as well, where you've got Gaucho, Jammer, Skip, the infantryman. It's really cool that they've kind of done that on the on this cover. Just
a little note on that one. So that obviously is taken from a Battle Action Force cover image.
Yeah.
But the colorist, John Burns was the colorist, and we never credited John Burns in our Total Action Force: The Battle Years book.
Start again.
But we're going to have to do a 3rd edition. But he is getting credited for his work in these editions. So John Burns was the colorist, but at the time that he colored that original cover, he colored Gaucho with the blue waistcoat. So the reference he had must have been a gung-ho figure for reference.
Right.
So it's been colored to orange for this, just for this edition, just to reflect the character.
That's great. A nice another little anecdotal bit of kind of detail there as well. I probably wouldn't have even noticed had you not said anything. So that's really cool. Now, on top of obviously these wonderful editions, we have, of course, the artists involved in making them. And obviously we'll go through them one by one. Starting, I believe, with Mr. Watson. Is it first?
Jim Watson. So
yes.
Just I've got to give a shout out. Yesterday was Jim Well, had he still been alive, yesterday would have been Jim Watson's birthday.
Crazy.
So he passed away in 2017. Like we lost a lot of the creative team.
I know, yeah.
That worked on this series. There's very few of them still with us. But Jim Watson, he was the artist who first brought Action Force to life. And right here is the very first cover appearance of Action Force on Battle. And this is all Jim Watson's work here. And he illustrated that first story that was serialized in 4 parts over 4 issues.
And we've obviously got some beautiful artwork from him as well in here too.
So this is actually just a tiny panel from that comic. I've actually taken this from like a competition, little competition forum that was in the comic. But this is Jim Watson's work, and he has this amazing knack in his style. It's very loose, very free, his style, but it's very visceral. It's full of action, and without him having to paint in a lot of detail, his brushwork creates all these kind of dynamic. It makes it look like there's more detail in there than he's actually drawn, and his style really, really suits the kind of action that's in the Action Force stories.
It totally does. Like again, I find that with pretty much all of the artists that worked on the Battle Action Force comics, it's hard to go, that's the iconic look. Do you know what I mean? Because they all really did well in their own styles, and none of them really, to me, stand out above the others. Like obviously, I know your favorite's Fanyo and the brothers in that sense, but like, it does feel like, when you look at the whole thing with all the different artists, it doesn't feel disjointed like some comics can feel sometimes. Like a long run of like a superhero comic that has multiple different artists touching it over the years, it can get some things like a storyline here could feel completely out of place further along because the differences in the style so dramatic, and sometimes the time period too. But in this case, it all felt like it was in the same universe, in my opinion.
Yes, that's a great way to put it, Chris. And here's more of this kind of dramatic sort of Watson artwork. Like it's very, very visceral. Very just that love. I just love that brushwork.
Yeah.
So compared to say the American production process, where you'd have a penciler, an inker, and a colorist, the artists on the British comics would pencil and ink their own work themselves.
Yeah.
And then a colorist would come in later if it was going to be a piece of art featured on the cover or the center spread.
Yeah.
Someone like John Burns would come in and then color it separately.
And we couldn't go through an episode talking with each other without a Wilhelm scream in there, could we? I mean, there has to be an "aye" in there.
There might be a Wilhelm scream on nearly every single one of these samples that we've got.
Do you remember it was the Wilhelm scream count, wasn't it? Last time whenever we did an episode of Disorder of Battle, it would always be how many times was it going to happen, almost betting on it before it kicked off. And it's used a lot, but that's because there's a lot of people falling and a lot of things kicking off left, right, and center in these comics.
Well, when we were in Joe Fest, myself and Paddy was great. Paddy's got a great knowledge of anything to do with kind of the comics and the toys.
Yeah,
and he was able to talk very eloquently with our kind of American friends that we were meeting over there about the difference between sort of the G.I. Joe comic and the Battle Action Force comic. And one of the big differences that came up was how violent the British comics are compared to the American stuff. And I know Larry Hannah, he could get dark at times with his writing for sure, and the artwork could reflect that. But that kind of consistency of violence that was coming up every week in the British comics, I would struggle now as a parent letting my kids are all grown up fairly quick now, but maybe a couple of years ago, I probably would have been very hesitant to let them kind of read some of this stuff, because it's really graphic. I mean, this particular spread is kind of relatively safe, but we'll see some stuff when we get a little bit further into it that is tough.
It was extremely violent. Even back then, I remember reading it, like seeing a few, reading a few, and just being like, I would say even Action Force Weekly and Monthly had like carryover of pretty violent things going on in them.
Yep.
And it was shortly after that period where comics started to have to be a little bit more, reserved in that kind of like violence, because it was. I remember it being, well into my kind of, I don't know, like trying to think how old I was when I stopped reading comics as a kid, but probably like 13, 14. It started to change then, I think, around that time period.
Well, for maybe some of our, say, American viewers who aren't familiar with the history of British comics, IPC Magazines was the publisher that published Battle. And a whole load of other different comics like 2000 AD and Action and other stuff. But they had the writing team had kind of like an ethos where they weren't going to pull their punches when it came to the action, it came to the violence. They were going to make it gritty. Tough, tense, terrific was kind of like the tagline on the cover of Battle.
Yeah.
But one comic, which was a precursor to Battle, was called Action. And Action got banned after only a few issues because of it was just so it was considered to be incredibly violent and to be setting a really bad example for kids. So that got banned and then merged into Battle. So technically, while it got banned, the stories just continued in Battle. So
classic maneuverage. I like it. It's a pincer movement, I'll call that. And we've kind of got a Nai there, which is pretty cool, but it's still a Wilhelm scream. And again, a little bit more visceral here, people kind of getting blown up and all sorts of stuff. So again, that level of kind of impactful kind of like harshness is still carrying on. And then of course we move into in fact, actually, I think this is still.
It's still Jim Watson.
This is still Jim, isn't it? This is a good shot
because this is, this shows the character of Baron Ironblood. He's not a coward who runs away. He likes to get stuck into the fight. And this particular panel is from a story written by Scott Goodall. And I just even like the language, that's used to describe how he's kind of monologuing to himself, talking about his enemy. He's a scary, creepy, homicidal lunatic.
100%. And you can tell that bloodlust in pretty much all of the issues that he's featured in. The way he kind of treats this, I wouldn't say like kind of like insubordinate sort of behavior. He just kind of like kills soldiers left, right, and center, even if they're not doing anything wrong. Like he is, your kind of ultimate evil villain, really. And even though he's got a coal bucket on his head, it's still actually quite menacing somehow. But yeah, no. Again, I think it's really cool. Ray says, Action Comics Hookjaw was unbelievably graphic. I don't even remember that, Ray. I mean, I don't think I've read that at all. I'm gonna have to check it out.
This is the stuff of nightmares. If
Punking has asked, does anybody remember the Action Force audio tape? There are a lot of Action Force audio tapes. Punking. I love there's one I got with the Special Core figure, which is on a vinyl, not even an audio tape. It's on a 7-inch vinyl, and it was General Hawk telling everyone about we're basically giving it's like a competition, and it's amazing. But yeah, there's loads of audio tapes. They were some of the most fun things to get, like in like a fan club or just incorporated into like toys and stuff. It was just so much fun.
So the audio stuff is Palatoy were producing the audio stories around the same time as this era of comics. 83, 84, with Baron Ironblood as kind of the main bad guy. But then when Hasbro took over in 86, 87, they continued the whole audio story thing as well. So I don't have any of those in my collection. I wish I did. But I have to give a shout out to the Kraken Wakes, Matt Paul. I know he has put some of them up on his YouTube channel. So if you check him out on YouTube, you'll find some of those audio dramas there that you can listen to.
Baron's Revenge. Yeah, that was a banger. That was a beauty. Ray has asked, Chris, are these totally new comics? Are any of these Joe reprints? I have no idea. I love the art. I can tell you now, Ray, this is all old vintage comics from back in the day, from a series called Battle Action Force, which kind of predates, you kind of G.I. Joe. Well, not predate, it was at the same time, but, predates G.I. Joe in the United Kingdom, effectively, to a point, and then, of course, is incorporated again into the comics later on in the stories. So this was the 5-point of articulation Palatoy period, going through all the way to effectively that last year, wasn't it, Brian, in 1985?
1985 was the 5 POA era kind of really ended, just
in the first year.
Well, it's
Half.
84 it ended, and then
Yeah.
they brought in the Hasbro G.I. Joe product then from 85. At that stage, and then they were selling overstock of the 5 POA kind of figures and vehicles in
Yeah.
parallel with the new Hasbro material.
Yeah. So that hopefully answers your question, Ray. These are old comics, reprints, in beautiful quality, reprinted, for the first time, officially, and in beautiful deluxe treasury editions. Was that the proper media response right there, or what?
Dude, you're on the payroll here. That's amazing.
Amazingly. Jim says it was a copper on the ground begging for mercy on the cover of Action that finally got it chopped. My goodness.
Yeah.
The Baron's Revenge
looked
was
like
great.
It was a copper on the ground, but actually, if people had read the story inside, it wasn't a copper on the ground. But the front cover looked like it was kids basically attacking and to kill a police officer.
Wow.
But when you read inside, that wasn't the case. But the cover was so graphic that that was enough to get it banned.
Nice. The Baron's
If
Revenge.
I'd known we were going to get into all of this stuff, I would have had more pictures there to show up on the screen.
Don't worry about it. But there's always search engines. The Baron's Revenge, Operation Liberty, Operation Shutdown, and then after that, the ones based on the TV show. Yes, Peppermint Space Capsule, the tapes. Again, love all of those. The art is beautiful, isn't it, Ray? Yeah, absolutely. A bike chain wielding youth stood over him. Yes, indeed. Never read any of them, but cannot wait to get a chance to dig in, says Newfie. Brilliant. That's what we like to hear. Now, moving through the artists, we move on to another probably very iconic artist within Battle Action Force, and that's John Cooper.
Oh, wow. I mean, John Cooper is, I know that I say that Vanyo is my favorite artist, but really John Cooper is like a close, really, really close kind of, second favorite. But I was recently cleaning up the artwork for Operation Claymore.
Yeah.
And when you're cleaning up the artwork, and I'm paying much more close attention to it than say if I was just kind of reading the comic. Yeah. And you can see the way John Cooper structures his panels on the page, how it flows. He's a visual genius. And we won't be able to kind of do justice in this kind of short interview here. We could do a whole episode dedicated to John Cooper, but it's not just his style.
I feel like we have done with Disorder of Battle, but yeah.
It's not just his kind of brush stroke style or his cross hatching style or anything like that, even though that is very unique and beautiful.
Yeah,
how he lays out the pages, and how he tic tacs back and forth as you're going down through the panels, bringing the action up and up and up. He's just brilliant as an artist.
Absolutely, I have to agree on that one. Stephen Kelly says nobody drew a chin better than John Cooper. Cracking artist. Yeah, his chins are proper chins.
Real men's chins.
Punking says, I've already pre-ordered these. I grew up with these comics. I had to choose between this and the G.I. Joe Kickstarter, but nostalgia won me over for this. Wow, amazing.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the support on that one, Punking. Jamie Lynn has asked, were the weekly ones black and white and the monthly in color? Do these reprint all? I've already purchased, by the way, just wondering. So when I mentioned weekly and monthly, I was referring to the Hasbro era of comics for the Marvel UK series. So after this particular period of time that Brian and I are talking about at the moment with the Battle Action Force comics, in 1987, they rebooted Action Force within kind of like the G.I. Joe figures again, but had like all points of articulation, etc., and effectively reprinted some A Real American Hero comics and did their own continuity as well. And that was a weekly series that lasted, I think, 50 issues. and then a monthly series that changed format, size, and of course release schedule to be a monthly, and that lasted for I think 15 issues,
15 issues.
and became European missions as well after that in the US. So the monthly series became European missions. So Jamie Lynn, when I mentioned monthly and weekly, I was referring to that. Now, in terms of Battle Action Force, as Brian has mentioned already, they were all black and white with the exception of covers and of course some kind of spread pages and just some interiors every now and again, right, Brian?
There actually is a surprisingly a large amount of color pages.
Yeah.
I know the art we're looking at tonight, these are all black and white pieces here that we're looking at, but there's a lot of full color work. The mini comics were all full color. The first story that was released, that was full color, and of course every issue had the full color spread throughout 1983 and 84. They dropped it, at some point in kind of late 84. When they changed the format of the comic a bit. So there is a lot of color pages in these books. So if you think maybe like a manga book, you'll get it'll be color, and then it'll go to maybe black and white, or then to grayscale and back to black and white. The Action Force format is not dissimilar to that. When you collate all the stories together, you get that kind of transition between black and white color.
You're right, though. It's actually quite surprising when you start reading through the comics. Oh, there's more color pages than you think. It's like they come around quite quickly. So that's another kind of nice aspect. But also, I feel like the black and white gives it another edge that you get a picture in your mind as you're reading it as to how it looks and how it is colored in your mind, and then you get to that color page and it's like, oh, I was way off. And then it starts, you see that one, then it kind of like informs you for the rest of the issue a little bit in your mind. And then I mean, that's what it used to do to me anyway. When I read them, it would kind of almost those particular pages would help color the rest of the book in my mind in a weird way.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
I've got to love this shot here, by the way, of the Pope.
This is a panel from Operation Claymore. It's one of these classic stories. And this is another Jerry Finley Day masterpiece, where the Red Shadows infiltrate a number of towns in Scotland disguised as redcoats in a commemorative pageant. And members of SAS Force who run manoeuvres up in the Highlands become aware of this plot that's happening, but they've no live ammunition. It's like it reminds me of, there was a film out probably around that time called Southern Comfort, which was about American army guys. That's a technical term. They run maneuvers with. It's
a technical term if you're 5 years old.
Yeah, that's myself mentally. I'm like a 5-year-old. They run maneuvers without any live ammunition, and they become hunted by some kind of local hunters, start chasing them down. So this.
Sorry, Mark has just pointed out. I said the Pope as a joke there, Mark. By the way, I have read this particular story, but he's like, they're not an elite squad all dressed up as the Pope, Chris. So thank you very much for that, mate. It was a tongue-in-cheek comment, but that's totally cool. Carry on.
So this story's got parallels to Southern Comfort, which is kind of maybe a bit of a Jerry Finley Day hallmark. You could see where he'd be pulling stuff from movies that weren't really made for kids and bringing them into stories that were totally aimed at 10 to 12-year-olds. So again, the SAS team here, they've no live ammo, and they've got to basically hike their way across the Highlands, trying to avoid kind of Red Shadow hunting parties. It's a brilliant story.
There's another shot here from that particular story as well, which is pretty cool. And Mark says, John Cooper was a workhorse and real clarity of storytelling.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. I feel like he did a lot, didn't he, of the Battle Action Force comics as well.
He did. I mean, even outside of Action Force, he worked on pretty much every title that IPC had going. So these guys would have to, like, in the case of Operation Claymore, that was 6 pages a week.
Yeah.
So he had to turn out 6 pages a week for this comic, on top of whatever else he was contributing.
Yeah, all the other stuff he was doing as well. Do you know what? What made me laugh is hearing those stories about artists who were like 13 or 14, and they were doing like pages for like all sorts of like professional comics that were out at the time and getting paid for it. I can't remember who it was that was telling this story. It might Mark might remember in the comments, but I'm sure there was a story going around. There was a kid. Sorry, when he was a kid, the artist was at his breakfast table before he went to school, like inking. Who was it? Sorry,
Brian Hitch.
Was it Hitch? I think it was. Yes. Like inking a page that had to go out, like his breakfast table, for goodness sake. Like that is it's wild to me that a child was doing that. Do you know what I mean? It's just blows my mind.
Yeah, that's and he would go on again. He's an Action Force artist, albeit from the Marvel UK period, and he went on to become like a megastar in the comics business. So that's
well, you got to be a prodigy if you're doing that as a kid, haven't you? That's nuts. Ray has asked if they deliver to the US. Absolutely, this is 100%. So yeah.
So we Skeletron are kind of a big partner in this project, and they're going to be handling all the US fulfillment. So that's a really good question there. So what we will do is, when the books are printed, we'll be shipping all of the North American orders as one batch to a fulfillment center in the US, and then they will all be distributed out from there. So that's why we're able to offer, I think it's about €25 shipping for North America for all 3 books together.
It's not
it's
bad
less
at all.
if you only order 1 book. So yeah, that's just touching on that point.
Thank you, Brian. Lovely stuff. Stephen Lee says, need Red Shadows in classified? Yes, we do. Ben says, reminds me of the old black and white war movies. And Punking says as well, as a kid, the black and white gave me a World War II gritty feel to everything. And RKW even says, keeps the child rating down, not showing red blood. Lol. It's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, FC Viper says those pages look gorgeous. We've got a few more to look at as well, FC Viper, but they do really look phenomenal. And Mark says pretty much all of Action Force Marvel UK was teenagers. That's unbelievable. Yeah. Russell Stephen says Brian Hitch's first published art was Action Force as well. That's amazing.
That's right. Yeah.
Thanks, Russell.
But if you like the team that worked on the Battle Action Force, they were nearly all seasoned veterans, with the exception of James Tomlinson, who was only 19. It was his kind of first major writing gig, and the vision that they had for Action Force was massive. It's comic, like it was half the comic. So they needed to put, a team together that were reliable, could do great stories, great art, and turn it around every week on time, no messing around. Whereas with Marvel UK, they also had to put a great team together, but they were all young, new kids on the block. Like there's probably nobody over 25 working on Action Force. Even like the editor, Rich Starkings, was only starting out in the business.
Amazing.
In Marvel UK. So it's a lovely contrast in between the two different
Right. Yeah, that's actually a good point, actually, that I've never really noticed before you said that. It blows my mind as well that you're looking at, 2 very different perspectives of life at that point as well. So that's really, really cool. Now we'll move on to your favorite finally.
Yes.
Now, when it says Vanyo, it's not just referring to one person, is it? We're talking about a brother combination here sometimes, aren't we?
Yes. So Vanyo is actually 2 brothers, and they in fact, I need to be able to say their names, and I should really have their names kind of memorized off the top of my head.
It's just easier to say Vanyo, though, isn't it? So
it is. So you have you've got Vincente and Eduardo. They're the 2. And so one would pencil, one would ink. It wasn't always the same brother who penciled and the same brother. Like they were interchangeable in those roles. But because it was a partnership, these guys could really turn over a lot of work every week, and they could pack in loads of detail. So we talked about Jim Watson at the start of this conversation, and Jim, would create the illusion of detail with his kind of very messy, very fine brushwork, whereas Vanyo would actually draw all the detail into it.
Right.
So you can even see here, like, how say the trees have been inked. You can nearly every branch is drawn. There's and of course the detail in that image on the right where the skier is
He's getting shredded up. Yeah.
Shredded,
It's
I'm
crazy.
surprised he didn't get an I.
Yeah, it's a yar this time, so it's with an N at the end. So it's yarn. These are great. In fact, it's funny because we're highlighting some of these sound effects or the yells or the screams in this, and my favorite one is going to be at the end when we talk about, again, when we come kind of back around to Marvel for a millisecond. But the Vanyo is another one where I just think the consistency level is outstanding. And it's one thing to churn all this stuff out, under kind of like, constraints of time and what have you, but like the level of quality was just so high, considering that element thrown in there as well. Like a lot of the time you think it might get a little bit sketchy at times or a bit rough, or no, they were just on it, quality and speed at the same time, and quantity. Beautiful stuff. And here's another night. This is another beautiful shot, another beautiful kind of panel, actually, because the detail in the face and everything going on here is just next level, isn't it?
I love this, and this is something Vanyo is great for, kind of facial expressions. Really, again, packing the detail in there. This is the Black Major. It's in from the story Assault on Atoll Z. They're pinned down on the beach, by Z-Force kind of covering fire. They can't progress any further, and just his frustration, but also how evil this guy is. It's Vanyo capture all of that brilliantly.
Awesome stuff. Anyway, RKW says he was a pirate. Vanyo. It's got a definite pirate vibe to the name, definitely. Stanley has asked chat, what time is the next stream today? Has Chris mentioned it yet? I haven't. I was going to wait to the end, but we will be going live a bit later on this evening. There's a lot of news going all over the place at the moment. So it's a busy day for old me today, but that's by the by. There's no specific time yet, Stanley. Just when we finish this, give me a minute and then we'll go live again, because I have no life. What else is saying in the chat? Peppermint Space Capsule says, God, I miss the 80s. Ben says, great price to the USA. Shockingly good. And Punkinger says, shipping to New York didn't make me cry for a change. That's nice. So that's good. I'm glad that Brian is helping that. And Skeletron, in fact, are helping with that particular aspect. And this is another beauty as well, isn't it? I love this one with the the ATC and the Jeep and everything. It's just some lovely lines on this one, and the detail in the forest, and the fact that one thing I love about this, Brian, is the fact that the panels are broken up by the foliage and the tree branches and everything, and it kind of they act as like your panel breaks, which is just, I love it when artists do that for certain pages and make it a very interesting page to consume. That is perfection right there in my eyes.
Absolutely. I mean, I love this. You've got your establishing shot with the armored column, and then on the bottom left there, you're coming in a bit closer, and then you're zooming in then on the lead Jeep with Skip, the Z-Force commander in there. And Vanyo is a master of that, with those kind of establishing panels and then zeroing in to the detail. And like you say, all that beautiful detail in the foliage, the forest kind of around, the way it frames the column, and of course it breaks up the different panels. These guys are, it's not just their inking style or their penciling style, but it's visually how they think about the page to bring you through the scene. It's super.
It's really cool. And again, I just there's something about that kind of tree branch breaking the thing as well, which is just like, I don't know, just it seems perfect. And I've seen that so many times as well in like 2000 AD, when they would have like weird kind of elements, like either kind of natural elements in the background kind of utilized to kind of create those sort of breaks. And we see it in comics all the time, but like, I don't know, I find it really satisfying as well visually when you see that, and extra care has gone into that. Do you know what I mean? It's not just a fact of like, we need to fill this kind of panel layout, we need to quickly tell a story in this particular layout of panels. It's like, let's work with something here, let's play with this, because I think this will look quite nice. And I like the thought that's gone into that.
That's, again, I love how you kind of put all that together. But that's exactly, you're exactly right about that. And I think, the fact that these guys had to work in black and white, they had to think about how they were going to fill up space. Because a colorist, could come in and could paint in sky to fill in that white detail, and it would be beautiful. But these guys knew it was going to be black and white when it was reproduced, so they had to be much more creative with those limitations. And what we get is incredible art.
Absolutely. I just want, okay. Sorry, got a couple more comments I wanted to get into quickly. FC Viper says, Chris, just stream live 24 hours a day all week until Sunday. I kind of do that anyway. Ben has said volumes 1 to 3 come out end of 2024 ? Additional
December.
Volumes for 2025. So they come out December, which is technically the end of 2024. So that works, Ben. Additional volumes for 2025.
Well, anything beyond these volumes is obviously subject to licensor approval, so I can't comment about that right now. But certainly the will and the ideas and the content is all there. But it's all down to the licensors kind of signing off at the end of the day. But the ambition for this project is big.
How many stories are left after these 3 volumes, Brian? Is there a lot?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, I think, at an estimate, it could go to at least 7 volumes, maybe even 8 or 9 volumes. Because the stories that are covered here are the principal continuity stories. So it doesn't delve into origin stories. So, for example, we've got Black Mage is a great origin story. It's another.
That's a long one as well.
That's a whopper. It's a Finley Day masterpiece. A lot of these kind of origin stories are how a good person becomes a bad person.
Yeah.
But the Black Major is a story of how a bad person becomes an even
worse person.
It kind of parallels the Destro story that's being told now in the Skybound universe or the Energon universe.
And isn't it cool to see like certain characters show up that were like in old comics from Action Force and stuff? That's awesome as well. Like I'm so happy that Skybound are involved at the moment, because they just seem to be just hitting all the right marks at the moment. It's incredible. Hang on, I just want to. Yeah, here we go. Jimmy says Vanyo could draw a mean crease and fold in a uniform. It's something that's always stuck with me about their style. Totally, absolutely. Peppermint Space. Go for it, mate.
I was going to say that the uniform creases. Yeah, that actually is a thing. Like that's the kind of detail we got. It wasn't just very quickly drawn or alluded to with a brush stroke. He drew it in there. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Peppermint Space Capsule says need more Space Force. Of course, you would say that, Peppermint Space Capsule. And Ben says sign me up for all the volumes. Already got 1 to 3 on order. Brilliant. Now the last artist we want to touch on quickly here relates to the cover for Volume 1, doesn't he, Brian?
So Robin Smith worked in the Palatoy era, Action Force within Battle, and he also worked with Marvel UK on the Action Force stories there. So what we've got here is the New Year's Eve issue release for 1983. This features Baron Armblood, written by illustrated by Robin Smith, and that's the artwork that was adapted for the cover of Volume 1.
Did you have somebody do some of the extra elements on that, or was that your work, Brian?
Everything is kind of digital. So all the covers are kind of a digital composite of multiple artworks. So if we kind of quickly deconstruct this here, I was able to find an image of of that, to say that image on the left, there was a black and white version of that within the pages of the comic.
Lovely.
So that didn't have any of the speech bubbles or text on it.
Yeah.
And then the explosion effect is actually a Jeff Campion explosion.
Oh, nice.
Taken from one of the panels in Operation Bloodhound. So it's a composite of those two pieces of artwork, but obviously all the foreground work is Robin Smith's work.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I just wondered if you had anyone working on it art-wise for any elements that might need to be filled in, like his shoulder. I was just thinking like cheekily kind of cut off at the side, like you said, the bubble cutting into the mask and everything. But that's really awesome. So yeah, good to know. And of course, with Robin Smith, he worked on the Marvel run as well, including the monthly, aka the European missions, and has probably one of the greatest ever sound effects. Does he not? In a comic ever?
Oh, he does, absolutely.
So as you can see, Sci-Fi is lining up to take out a Rattler. Good timing. Currently topical. And this is the I want you to say it when we switch cameras, Brian. And this is what happens when you shoot a Rattler with Sci-Fi's laser.
Bichoom!
I think after I did this issue, I want to say, with Talking Joe. And I want to say that this is a word I wanted to use. I wanted to put in my lexicon way more and haven't done it since. So I'm going to make a point to call people bitchooms. I think it's an amazing sound effect right there.
We should totally sign off on this episode, not saying full force. We'll sign off with bitchoom at the end.
Bitchoom. Right? Amazing.
But
it gets me every time.
I really wanted to spotlight Robin Smith in this because, again, on the British comics fans, they'll know Robin's work because it's all over 2000 AD. He did loads of covers for Battle Action Force. He's really well known within the British comic scene. But on the American side, they'd be familiar with his work on the G.I. Joe European missions. Yeah. So there is that connection, in terms of the creative team with G.I. Joe. Robin Smith is that kind of, he's the missing link that joins it all together. So,
and Mark has added, comic fact, Robin Smith was art editor on 2000 AD. He did a lot of their cover layouts, who were then drawn by another artist such as Steve Dillon, similar to Harmer and Zek in Joe.
Excellent.
Nice one. Thank you very much for that, Mark. A little bit of extra info. I like it. Yeah, so obviously let's just get a bit tuning back up. Now, Jerry Findlay Day, the man, the myth, the legend.
So you'll see with all of these volumes that the lead writer in all these volumes is Jerry Findlay Day. Even though on volumes 1 and 2, there are other contributors who help with the writing, like James Tomlinson and Scott Goodall, Jerry Findlay Day penciled, wrote the scripts for almost all of this work. He was the main writer. And this is a recent picture of Jerry. And I've had the chance to speak to him a couple of times on the phone as part of this project. He is an absolute gentleman, lovely, lovely guy. And he has very fond memories of kind of working on Action Force.
That's always good to hear.
But it was Jerry who explained to me that when he was called into the editorial team to work on this, they laid out the ambition for how big this story was going to be within the comic. I mean, it was massive.
Yeah.
So he knew he had a universe that he could really sink his teeth into. And even though Palatoy had prepared, like their marketing team and design team had prepared a lot of backstory stuff for the various teams, the various characters, it wasn't overly prescriptive. So Jerry was able to, bring the universe to life, bring the characters to life. And that's what he did. So you might say, take a character like, say, Stakeout, his file card, which is, very minimal, tells you that he's the son of a Liverpool docker.
Right.
Ex-convict turned good guy, joined SAS force. And, that's all it tells you. Jerry creates this whole new character who's got this wicked sense of humor. His sense of humor is so wicked, he wrecks everybody's head. Nobody likes working with him. And he's able to use that to create great dynamics in these different stories, where there's this conflict within the good guys team, because Stakeout's a bit of an asshole.
He's a son of a bitume, some might say.
But and again, like Larry Hannah, Jerry's got a military background, so I think he was a paratrooper. So he was able to bring his experience, his military experience, into how he would kind of craft these stories. So if we take Desert Strike just as an example, well, there's lots of action in Desert Strike, which is the first Z-Force story in Volume 3. Rather than kind of battlefield heroics winning the day, it's a game of chess, of kind of strategy between the bad guys and the good guys, each one trying to out-strategize the other. And how Jerry puts that together is magnificent.
Absolutely.
And maybe to give some people a bit of a sense of his kind of history prior to Action Force, he would have worked on kind of World War II stories like The Sarge, which is an epic World War II story of kind of a British squad led by their sergeant and all the different characters. It's like Band of Brothers, but written in the 1970s. And it follows these guys from North Africa up into Italy and into Northern Europe. And then he worked on Hellman of Hammer Force, is another one of his creations.
Cool.
And that is kind of like Hellman is like a tank commander in the German army in World War II. So he's an anti-hero. You get to see things from his perspective, and you're kind of rooting for this guy who is, he doesn't sing the party line. He questions those in authority above him. Again, fantastic kind of twist on your typical kind of anti-hero story.
Yeah, totally.
And then he worked in the sci-fi genre as well. He created the VCs for 2000 AD.
Oh, nice.
And of course, you can see here on the books that are laid out in front of him, you can see Rogue Trooper.
Rogue Trooper. I was going to say straight away, like stands out like you can't avoid it, can you?
And Rogue Trooper is probably considered his masterpiece in terms of what he created. That kind of a future war story. That's an anti-war story. In fact, all of his stories are anti-war stories, really.
Pretty much. Yeah.
But Rogue Trooper is again his masterpiece, and there is a Rogue Trooper movie coming next year, I believe. So keep an eye out for that. So that's the kind of heavyweight that came to Action Force when they were putting the team together. And Jerry, certainly in these 83, 84 stories, 80% of this material is all Jerry's work. Like, he's just prolific. And they really are incredible story. It's amazing storytelling at its best for a licensed franchise. And we weren't seeing anything like that in British comics at that time.
Absolutely. Now, Russell Sheath has asked, will there be an opportunity for signed editions or signings?
We won't be offering signed editions as part of our kind of pre-orders, but Jerry does still do public appearances, albeit, maybe not that many. But I know, for example, he's doing one in Forbidden Planet this August in London.
Lovely.
So, and he did Enniskillen Comic Fest in Ireland last year. So he does, he does get out and about. He is out there on the public scene. So I definitely think that if you get a chance to go and see Jerry, definitely go. He's a super personable, lovely guy, and he'd be happy to sign your books.
What about you, and what about yourself? Would you be signing any of these?
Well, if someone really wants me to sign their books, I'm happy to do that. But I'm not really the creator. I'm just, publishing the books. But it's if we think about who we've got left with us, we've got Jerry still with us, James Tomlinson, another writer, he's still with us, and Cam Kennedy. Again, another superstar comic artist on both sides of the Atlantic. He's still with us as well. So they're still, alive. They're well. They're doing the conventions. And if you get a chance to see any of those guys, please go and see them.
Yeah, just take your massive deluxe treasury edition with you and get it signed. Amazing stuff. Now, we have a little bit of a exclusive for people today. We have the end date for the early bird bundle deal. Take it away, bud.
So the early bird bundle deal, it's going to wrap up on August 17th. So we actually launched the pre-orders back in June 17th. So it'll be a full 2 months that we were able to keep that open. But we do have to close that deal at this time. So you've got a couple of weeks still to get in there and get 3 books for the price of 2. So that actually works out at a huge saving. That's about, if you're in the United States, you're going to save about $80.
Nice.
On all 3 volumes. If you're in Britain, you're looking at saving. It's about £62 is the saving.
It's significant. It's significant.
A chunk of change. So that is going to close. Now, people will still be able to pre-order the books after August 17th, but the early bird bundle deal will not be available.
Brilliant. Yeah, cool. And I think that pretty much covers everything. I was just looking in the comments as if we had any more, but no, I think that pretty much covers everything now. Brian, thank you so much, bud, for jumping on and chatting with me about all this. Okay, sorry, someone's beeping in the background. Yeah, thank you so much for jumping on, mate, and chatting about the Deluxe Treasury editions. I'm really excited for these still. Like, I can't wait to get these in hand. And the fact, again, that we've still got this opportunity for the early bird bundle. And it's a significant amount of time as well, August the 17th, and and as well, not that gives us plenty of time to get ready, get our funds together, and grab these 3 books. 100%.
And that is going to end Pacific time. So for our kind of friends in the United States, it'll be midnight Pacific time, August 17th. That's when the deal will close. But as I say, you can still pre-order beyond that date, but the early bird bundle deal will end midnight, August 17th.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thanks very much, bud. Any final words? That sounds a bit dark, doesn't it? Any last words? That's just as bad. Anything else to say, I should say?
I forgot to mention that Jerry Finley-Day has written an introduction, which will be included in Volume 1. And James Tomlinson is writing an introduction for Volume 2.
That's amazing. That's some really good. That's brilliant. You getting the creators involved to do that obviously makes a lot of sense, but that's awesome.
So then we have David MacDonald, who is our co-author with myself and Paddy on the Total Action Force books.
Yeah,
he's put a forward together in 3 parts, so it'll be split over volumes 1, 2, and 3, and that will really kind of dive into maybe some of the history of British comics, looking at the creative processes in terms of how the production of those comics was approached.
Yeah.
Which is a great little article that he's put together. So for people who maybe aren't as familiar with the British comics publishing methods, David kind of breaks that down a little bit, and specifically how it applies to the Action Force stories.
Fantastic. Punking says, thank you, Brian, for all your work on this. I can't wait to relive some of my childhood. 610 Yojo Daddy says, already ordered, can't wait. Russell says, great work, fellas. And RKW says, better have a Robo Skull cover next. Oh,
yeah. Well, you know it's going to happen eventually.
I mean, let's face it. That you can bet on that. Anyway, Brian, thank you for joining me, mate. Really appreciate it, buddy. I'll be back later on this evening with more of your news burst goodness as I live stream my life away. And Brian, we'll hopefully get you back on again soon. Maybe when things are more updates, a little bit more information. If anything pops up, we'll love to have you back on again to chat about everything.
Brilliant. Look forward to it. It's going to be great.
Awesome. So stay fresh, cheese bags, and not as always, as slightly different. I'm going to say, smile, you son of a, and then we'll say that one. Okay, so after 3. 1, 2, 3. Smile, you son of a bitch. That's it for this instalment of the Full Force Comics News Burst. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe. See you next time, and as always, Full Force.
Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on X, formerly Twitter, @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Full Force. We've also added a brand new Instagram, so check us out there as well, @The Full Force Podcast, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on any of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click on the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.